Hey guys, it's Foxxy here once again, bringing you a review of another licensed History Channel first-person shooter. The first one I reviewed was Civil War Secret Missions. If you have not seen that review and are curious about the game, then click this link in the annotation above. And like that game, Battle for the Pacific is a budget title that was published by Activision and developed by Cauldron. This is also a multi-platform release that came out back in late of November 2007. And if I'm hopefully correct, Battle for the Pacific is the second installment, if you want to call it that, in the, I guess, series of History Channel licensed games. So, like always, let's start out with the story. Before each level, you are given a short little documentary-style video that explains what each level is going to be about. So, for example, if the level is Iwo Jima, then the pregame clip is going to be about Iwo Jima. However, the story in the game itself is, for the most part, non-existent. It's all pretty much cut and dry. You're in World War II fighting the Japanese, and there's really nothing else left to explain. Also, before I move on, just like in Civil War Secret Missions, this game is also ungodly short. It's a little bit longer than the Civil War game, but still, it took me a total of 2 fucking hours to complete the entire campaign on just the normal difficulty. But unlike Civil War Secret Missions, Battle for the Pacific actually has, well, I guess had a multiplayer, but from what I've heard, it was terrible and not many people played it to begin with. Which, to be honest, doesn't really surprise me at all. Now, the graphics, well, people shit all over this game saying how awful it looks, and I've even heard a couple times that this game is some of the worst graphics they've ever seen on this generation of consoles. I don't think it's as bad as people are making it out to be, in my opinion, but it's definitely not good. I would go as far as to say the game just has bad graphics, but I don't think I could ever say they're absolutely horrible, especially for when the time this game came out. Though, if this were to come out, like, around now, then that's a completely different story. Although, there is one very annoying issue I have with the graphics. Once in a while, the frame rate will get very noticeably choppy. There's times where you can tell what exactly is causing it, like a lot of explosions on screen, or when you get into an MG, it's very obvious that's causing some issues. But the rest just seems to come at complete random. And to make matters worse, the game suffers from a shit ton of graphical bugs. For example, sometimes when you shoot, there is no recoil or muzzle flash, and I don't even know exactly how to explain this, but aiming in and out after firing a bolt-action rifle doesn't have the animation of actually cycling the bolt. Another big problem I have with the game is noticeable within like the first 15 seconds of playing, and I'm talking about the control here. Looking around and aiming with the right thumbstick is absolutely horrendous, and I guess it's going to be hard to explain something like this without really experiencing it yourself, but honestly, I've played over 100 first-person shooters, and this one has probably one of the worst, if not the worst, aiming controls I've ever experienced. Now sure, I've played some shitty shooters like Hour of Victory where the turning is extremely slow at first, then speeds up really fast. This doesn't even do that. It's just all very clunky and there's just no fluidity with the controls. And what makes it worse is that sometimes when you try to make subtle movements, or even just to try to move the fucking right analog in general, the game just barely, or worse, doesn't respond at all. Anyway, let's talk more about the gameplay. The entire game consists of you being forced to closely follow and take orders from a sergeant in your squad, like blowing up artillery or whatever else. And I say forced because if you get as far as I think like 40 meters away from him at any given time, the game just ends and you have to start the checkpoint all over again. Unless of course you come across another annoying glitch where your sergeant just randomly stops moving altogether for no apparent reason. And the only way to get him to move, I've found, is by either restarting the checkpoint, which obviously you don't want to do, or by moving past him till you get yelled at a couple times, then for some fucking reason he starts moving again. By the way, you're going to hear your guy screaming at you to follow him the entire game, even if you're running right beside him, so just be aware of that.
Move your ass! Go! Move your ass! Go!
Besides that glitch, surprisingly, the allied AI seems to be pretty useful with killing enemy soldiers and shit. But on the other hand, the enemy AI is completely incompetent. They'll either run straight at you without shooting, or if they do shoot, I don't even think they move at all. They didn't really program them to get into cover or have any sort of strategy when they see you. The gameplay itself never really changes. I mean, you do get to take control of AA guns and mounted MGs every so often, but like, once you've played the first 15 excruciatingly repetitive minutes or so, you've pretty much played the entire game all the way through. It doesn't really offer you any variety in the level designs, weapons, mission objectives, or just honestly really anything at all. Speaking of the level designs, some of them, for example the ones that take place in trenches, look like they were copied and pasted, just changed around slightly, like they added different pathways or something. So in other words, the level designs just completely suck ass. So moving on to my final thoughts, well, with all the bugs, aiming problems, and the whole graphics issue thing I was going on about earlier, I just can't fucking fathom someone actually testing this game out before it was released. I just don't see how it was possible. And you know what's really funny about this game is that the more I played it, I kept seeing certain similarities to another game called Soldier of Fortune Payback. That game came out less than a month earlier than Battle for the Pacific did. Little did I know at the time that both games were made and published by the same fucking people. There's so much stuff in Battle for the Pacific that was just copied verbatim from Soldier of Fortune. For example, the gun sounds, the silly way the gun is aimed, even the hilarious grenade throw animation, just to name a few. So, what Battle for the Pacific is really is just a shittier, more broken version of a game that is also pretty shitty. Oh, but there is one final thing I didn't mention. This isn't the only version of Battle for the Pacific. Remember how I said that this is multi-platform? Well, the PS2 version of the game is completely different than the one you're seeing now, because it was made by a different developer. And apparently from what I've heard, it's supposed to be much worse than this game. But I'll talk more about the PS2 version another time.